Let's talk about importance of opening traps in a chess game. I know a whole category of chess players of all levels. They emphasize all their opening repertoire. They put emphasis on traps. They want to play traps and nothing but traps. This is a very bad idea. Now, there are several ways to approach to creating and avoiding those traps. I know people who can damage their position, who can make anti-positional move purposely just to hope that they're gonna catch their opponent in some trap. And when this does not happen, they have a bad game. Well, but it's okay in a number of cases to set the trap. Why is it okay? Because only one explanation can be there, that you do not damage your position, it doesn't hurt your position. You play normal move, you play logical move, you do not violate basic principles, and at the same time you set the trap. This is like a free chance to benefit on the opening trap. So let's look at some examples of it. Well, one is in Sicilian. Knight f3, d6, d4, cd, and knight takes d4 is a normal move in this position. However, queen takes d4 is also very acceptable continuation. Knight c6, bishop b5, bishop d7, bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, e6. The reason why I'm going so fast with this moves because this is all very well known in modern chess theory. Castles long, bishop e7, and now queen d3. Well, the main move in this position is rook e1 for white. There is nothing wrong with queen d3. The idea of queen d3 move is to put knight on d4. That does not damage your position. It's a very acceptable move. Queen d3, now black castles, white goes knight to d4. a6, f4, queen c7. Now, what would white play normally? I would say normal move is rook h to e1. I would say normal move is king b1. And I would say normal move may be rook h to g1 preparing g4. Not 100% normal move is h4. Now, is h4 a damaging move? No, it's not. It's okay to play h4 because it reflects, actually it's logical, it reflects this position. So we want to go h4, it's like putting pressure on king's side. Now, if black plays h6, I think in a lot of cases you can leave this bishop on g5 because in case black takes on g5, white pawn will take on g5, and after queen h3, black is going to be in a lot of trouble. So, but what is the idea to play h4 on this stage? The idea is a trap. This is a trap in which black falls right in. Okay, after h4, let's talk about the position, the general plans in this position. So obviously you want to try for activities on a king side, since black's king is castle there, and your king is on queen side. So your opponent is going to try same activity on the queen side. So the move to expect from your opponent is b5 here. That's the normal move. And that's exactly the trap. After b5 and e5, black is totally lost. That's exactly what happened. And how does h4 move helps? We're going to see now. And after e5, black simply played rook d8 and gave the knight away. Now let's see what would have happened if they took on e5. If black takes on e5, white plays knight takes c6. And here is why h pawn is needed. Now queen takes c6, pawn takes e5. Now the knight is hanging on f6, and after knight d5, simply knight takes d5. And now black's bishop is hanging, and after bishop takes g5, white wins because they recapture with h pawn, and black does not have time to take white's knight because of queen takes h7 checkmate. So that was well hidden trap that black did not do anything bad here, any big mistakes. They just overlooked the trap. And white did not make any bad moves. They didn't damage this position. Well, the experienced player here will not have, you cannot catch experienced player in this trap, because when someone plays h4 in this position, if someone played this against me, and I proudly count myself as an experienced player. So, and after h4, I would say, wait a minute, if my opponent played h4, why did he play h4 now rather than go for g4? And I would suspect something. So you have to have this sense of the danger. You have to sense the danger here. And after b5, e5, game is practically over. This is the trap. Now h4 is a good trap. Good trap because no damage, no harm been done to white's position. Now let's look at exact opposite trap, also by white, that actually I played myself. And I spent, the reason why I played this trap, it was not a known trap. I invented it myself, and I put a lot of time into developing it, and which was clearly wrong for me to play this trap just for that reason. It was c4. I showed this trap in one of my previous tapes. And c4, c5, knight f3, knight f6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, e6, g3, queen c7. This is well-known position of English defense. Now, instead of bishop g2, since black is attacking c4 pawn, why I played knight c3. This is also theoretical move. And now queen takes c4 is not recommended because white plays e4. Queen is hanging, and when queen moves to b4, white can go knight d2 b5, and white has tremendous compensation. Queen is badly placed on b4. this is known, and we are not going to go into much of the details of it. Now a6, this is also best theoretical move. And now the main move in this position is, well, actually there are a few moves. Queen b3, queen d3, or bishop g5. The reason why, because on bishop g2, black simply can take the pawn on c4. So I spent a lot of time and made here totally unexpected move and a bad move. I knew it was bad when I played, but it was bad not because it was losing or something, but I played bishop to d2. That's an ugly looking move, and it's justified only in the case white takes the pawn on c4. If white takes pawn on c4, if black takes pawn on c4, white is nearly winning. And my opponent was a strong enough player to suspect something unusual here, and he did not calculate. He didn't see why he shouldn't take the pawn, but he just trusted his intuition. He correctly declined pawn sacrifice. He went knight c6, and he got better position. I put a lot of effort to make a draw to equalize with white. Now let's look what would have happened after queen takes c4. This is the trap. Rook c1. Now white is threatening to all kind of jumps with this c3 knight to to b5 or d5. And when black takes on d4, I don't want to waste much time of it. I just show you how white wins. Knight goes to d5. I know you guys out there would love the traps. I know you wouldn't be watching this tape unless you like those traps, and I know some of you are obsessed with it. And so after knight d5, black is lost. Queen takes d5, rook takes c8, king e7, and bishop to g2. And black is on the verge of resigning here. Queen takes g2 leads to immediate mate. After bishop b4, check, d6, queen takes d6. And move like queen to d6 will be met by queen b3. And now the queen b3 move creates multiple threats, such as queen takes b7, trapping rook, bishop b4, winning queen, and black is totally lost. Now, bishop d2 was played. This is a pointless, this is a bad trap. In other words, it may turn out good for you, but it's good only for one game. Can you play it second time, even if it worked, the trap? It may be good for one game, but even then, I personally cannot recommend to play some move that does not have full 100% justification. So bishop d, that's a bad idea of a trap. Now, let me show you a couple of other traps. It's also on one of my tapes. I believe it was called Crushing Lines. I had one line in Alekhine defense: e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5, c4, knight b6, c5, knight d5, knight c3, knight takes c3, d takes c. This is okay position for white to play. Now this is theoretical position. Black has no problems here. Black has no problems if they play correctly. But if the correct move is e6, attacking c5 pawn and later playing knight c6 and b6, and again, I don't want to go into all details and analysis of Alekhine defense. So the other move is d6, which is also okay move. But here, white has very dangerous move. Queen to b3, and it looks like most innocent move. It doesn't look like black is in any kind of trouble here. And black, what is the most obvious move for black in this position? Obviously, pawn takes pawn, not c5 pawn, because e5 pawn looks a lot tastier, because it's a central pawn, and then you're gonna develop knight and bishop, and you have extra pawn. It's a extra pawn in the center. After d takes e, black is lost. Well, this is the example of well-hidden trap. Now bishop to g5, and all of a sudden black is having problems they cannot solve. Can you imagine how bad this position can be if black's only move in this position is queen to d7? This is the ugliest move that I've seen in years. And this is the only move for black to stay alive. Now, why is this the only move? Now, what does white want? White wants to play bishop c4, attack f7 pawn, and black cannot go e6 because bishop will take the queen. Now you can say, wait a minute, there must be some other ways to stop bishop c4 and bishop takes f7. But there are not. Okay, well, there is f6 move. There are many ways, but none of them is sufficient. There is no bishop e6 at any point because of queen takes b7 is a killer. Now after knight d7, you have many moves. You have bishop b5, you have c6. So what can really black do? One of the continuations is f6. Now if I go bishop c4, then black goes e6, and black has great position because on bishop takes e6, he can simply take on e6, queen takes e6, and go bishop e7. It's no problem here for black. However, f6 is a losing move. This is a losing move. That's the main idea of a trap. Now rook to d1, attacking the queen, and black's answer is forced, knight to d7. On bishop d7 again, b7 pawn hangs, so knight to d7, and here comes instant killer. Now if white goes bishop c4, then e6, and on bishop takes e6, queen e7, black is doing fine because threatening knight takes c5, attacking queen and the bishop on e6, and threatening also pawn takes g5. Black is doing fine. But the killer is queen to e6, and black can resign on the spot because next move is bishop c4 and queen f7. There is no shadow of defense. Black should resign right away. This is a trap. Now this is a trap. Any trap you set up, if it's an opening trap, it has very short life. Basically traps have short lives, except for if you play this against people that they are not interested in looking any other people's games, or they have no interest in update their opening repertoire and see what's going on in the world, in the chess world. So in this case you can trap them several times. So I'm not talking about those players. So trap is good only once. That's why when you set up the trap, make sure you don't damage your position. Now let's look at a couple of more examples of the trap. Here is another trap in Caro-Can that is, I think it's relatively well known. E4, C6, D4, D5, knight C3, D takes E, knight takes E4, and knight F6. Now this is one of the acceptable moves in this position. If white plays knight takes F6, black can play E takes F and bishop D6, or even G takes F. In both cases with interesting play. However, white played knight G3. And now black makes move here that sets up the trap and at the same time does not damage their position. H5. Now, what's the idea of this move? To go H4 and to discomfort the knight on G3. So correct answer in this position is H4 for white. Well, then black is going to play maybe bishop G4, E6, and so on. So if you make move like H5, like wasting tempo, and you force your opponent to waste the same tempo, which is the best move in this position, that's okay to do. But white played bishop G5 instead. Now that's a mistake. That's a costly mistake. Now black goes H4. And after H4, in this position, white's idea was bishop takes F6, and now they thought if pawn is going to take the bishop, then they will come back to E4, which is okay. But black took the knight. Now white sees that bishop is hanging, and H2 pawn is hanging, and the F2 pawn is hanging. So white is forced to play bishop E5. Now you see, if in this position black simply plays pawn takes F2, check, and forces white to play king takes F2, this is already good for black. Well, this would have been the best continuation in this position, if not one that did happen in a game. Black has a forced win in the 2 or 3 moves here. Rook takes H2 check. Rook takes H2 without check. Okay, rook takes H2, forced because the rook is hanging on H1. And now imagine for a second there is no bishop on E5. I just take it off the board for a second. Then pawn will take on H2, and black is gonna make a queen next move. Regardless what white plays, black is going to have second queen. However, the bishop is on the way. Now if we take on H2, bishop will take on H2 and material is even. Nothing has happened. So what, in this position, what black does, black eliminates that bishop on E5. Black goes queen A5 check, and after C3 or queen D2, which doesn't make much difference, queen takes E5 check. Pawn takes queen, and now black takes white's rook. Now what is going to happen? They're going to have another queen on H1. So white has to save the knight at least to play something like knight F3. Or if they play castle long, for example, threatening mate on D8, that's okay too, because we can easily stop it by playing bishop to D7, and next move is going to be the queen. So on knight F3, there is a new queen. Black makes another queen, and black has, in this case, an extra bishop, and they are totally winning. So this is the combination. This is a trap, and black has not done anything to compromise its position. I have seen people go to some extremes to set up some cheapo. That's a bad idea. It may work in one case. but it's going to hurt in a great deal your strength, your chess strength. Now, let's look at the interesting variation of Sicilian. E4, C5, knight F3, knight C6, D4, CD, knight takes D4, G6. This is Paulson variation. Knight C3, bishop G7, bishop E3, knight F6, queen D, actually bishop C4, queen A5, and here White's best move is castle. We'll look at the castle. Suppose black goes for a trap and they play queen to B4, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to B3. And now knight takes E4. It seems like black just won a pawn. Now, White's best answer maybe knight takes E4, or maybe knight takes C6. There are two different moves. Knight takes E4 does not produce good result for White, because knight takes D4, and White does lose a pawn, because after C3 there is knight to E2 check, and when White takes the knight on E2, black plays queen takes E4, and black is pawn up for no visible compensation. So that looks like it's a trap for black. And what happens after knight takes E4? After knight takes E4, black has a lost position because White plays knight takes C6, attacking the queen. The only move is pawn takes C6. It doesn't really matter which pawn. White goes A3. Now you see what happens? Now the queen is hanging, and queen cannot be moved, because if black's queen goes anywhere, White is going to take black's knight on E4. But black has knight takes C3, and now looks like they are okay, because if we take the queen, then black takes White's queen. And if White takes the knight, then queen is going to just retreat. So what's the point? After knight takes C3, White goes queen to F3. Now White is a piece down, but black's queen is hanging, which absolutely and unconditionally has to be moved now, and queen takes F7 is threatening. Queen takes F7 is going to be very, very painful. So the best move may be knight E2 check. Now we don't want to take on E2, because then queen will move and F7 pawn will not be hanging anymore. So we go king H1. Now we know that our next move is going to be queen takes F7 check. So queen has to move from B6, and it doesn't matter where it moves, even if it wants to G4. We go queen takes F6, king D8, queen takes G7, and there is a lights out for black. It's totally over. Just one funny variation if you want to see: rook E8, rook D1 check, and on king C7, queen E5 is a pure mate in this position. So this is black's trap for winning pawn when they went queen B4, ended very badly. So it's there. I've seen many opening traps where in which one side or the other gets unsuspectedly, but I've set up many traps in my life, and I've fallen in several of them too, but I've never played just for them, with an exception of the English that I just showed you a few minutes ago. It's easy to be mistaken to see the difference between trap and just tactical error. Sometimes tactical error from one side can be referred as a trap of the opponent. No, it's not so. Trap is the kind of thing when one side deliberately plays inviting opponent for logical response, and then the tactical shot appears. So let's look at one example of French defense. E46, D4, D5, E5. That's very well known advanced variation of French. C5, C3, knight C6, knight F3, queen B6. This is very common position of French defense, of advanced variation of French defense. Now, the main move in this position is bishop to E2. However, there for some time was very popular to play bishop to D3. As you can notice, bishop D3 weakens D4 pawn, white's D4 pawn. Obviously, black cannot win this pawn right now, because pawn takes pawn, knight takes D4, knight takes D4, and after queen takes D4, bishop B5 check wins the queen. Now, is this a trap? No, that's not a trap. This is too cheap of a trap to set on any level. This is just pawn sacrifice in a future. So because black plays bishop D7, stopping that bishop B5 check, and now white castles. Now this is a pawn sacrifice. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight takes D4, knight takes D4, queen takes D4. Now what happened is black made two moves with a queen. We already discussed that it's not good idea to do in the opening stage of the game. However, they won a central pawn. Now white goes knight C3, and here black has a chance to win a second pawn, to take pawn on E5. Now, is this okay to win second pawn, to open more files in the center, and make another move with a developed piece already, in which case it's a queen. In this case it's a queen. That means you know that this queen is going to have to make another move. So it's going to be 4 moves with a queen. White goes rook E1, and it's okay to go queen D4 now. Now notice, if black goes queen F6, then knight takes D5, because E6 pawn is pinned. So black goes queen D4, and here comes tactical shot or trap, whatever you want to call it. Here, white is almost winning. All white has to do here to do the check with the bishop on D3, to check black with the bishop on D3. Now, if bishop takes F7 move was legal, white would have been winning. But bishop takes F7 move is not a legal move. So what we need to check with the bishop. So the answer is rook takes to E6. And now you see that this rook on E6 is totally untouchable. And the reason I already mentioned, because if bishop takes, then we have the check we always wanted, and pick up black's queen. And if pawn takes, then we have a check also on G6, and again we win the queen. So, which makes this rook on E6 untouchable. So black has to play bishop e7, and then we go rook e1, and we have great position. Now black has only one extra pawn, and white develops quick and has overwhelming position. Now this is not a trap. This is the trap that black has to avoid, does not deliberately set with by white. It's white just using this tactical resource to develop quick. But white did not do anything damaging to their position, and they did not do anything they wouldn't have done if they didn't have that tactical shot. So bishop d3. Okay, this is one example. Very interesting example was developed by me, and I'm not very proud of it because I never had to use it, because it was based and it was actually anticipated that the trap was based only on black's bad play. It's also Sicilian, Sveshnikov, very popular Sveshnikov variation, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, e5, knight db5, d6. Now in this position, knight d5 is a very well-known variation. Knight takes d5, e takes d5, knight e7. This position was played on a reasonably high level, hundreds if not thousands of times. And the main move in this position is c4. Later to bring the knight on c3. And there is a lot of theory to it, and both sides have acceptable position. It's still been played lately. So with the move I developed, this is a trap. This is a positional and tactical trap. Pawn c3 that looks like very, very, well, to put mildly, stupid move. I can call it stupid because it's my invention. I can call anything I want. So c3, and now actually it has very well hidden tactical idea. Normally, before we go to c3 move, I'll tell you that on c4, normal move for black is knight g6, bishop e7, and castle. That's how black plays. On c3, knight g6 is a bad move. Now, black is in a lot of trouble. Black is in a lot of trouble. The correct move is knight f5, and you're going to have great difficulties justifying this knight on b5. Eventually we have to go a4 and then go knight a3 when we get kicked, and knight to c4. Actually, position is playable. It's not like a terrible position for white or something, but it's not good to play it. White does not have any advantage at all, maybe even slight disadvantage. Now let's go with move knight g6, and let's see what's the idea of the trap. It's a very well hidden trap. Queen a4 is the move. Now on queen a4 we have a clear idea of discover check, and obviously queen d7 is bad because of knight c7 check, and the white wins. So bishop d7 is normal response. And now white plays queen c4, threatening knight c7 check. Now that looks totally crazy. What is the idea? If black plays rook c8. So black does play rook c8, but now we go queen to b4. And all of a sudden you see that d6 pawn cannot be protected, and also a7 pawn hangs. Black is lost now. Black is totally lost. Now let me explain why we played queen c4. Because if we play without queen c4, immediately queen b4. Then after queen b8, white has nothing. Next move, knight will be kicked out, and black is going to complete development and have an advantage. So that's why first you lure this rook to c8. After queen c4, rook c8, and now you go queen b4. Now this is a trap, and what you have to do, if you play it, you go queen a4 in this position, and you go c3 in this position, and close your eyes. When you open, if you see your opponent's knight on g6, you are luckiest man. And if your knight goes to f5, that means you can say, with my luck, I shouldn't play chess. No, that's not a wise decision. Luck has nothing to do with it. So that means c3 is interesting idea of a trap, but it does not work. If your opponent, well, in some cases, you set the trap and your opponent has to figure out. Now, if you play it, if someone plays this variation with black and they know it well, they don't have to figure out. They already know about c3 trap. Any novelty, that's why they call it novelty, can be novelty only a certain period of time. Then it's no longer novelty. It's just another variation. Let's look at another interesting idea in very well-known dragon variation of Sicilian. I can't imagine any chess player who has been playing more than few months did not hear about dragon. This is regular dragon variation. And in this position, what is most common move? Bishop e3. What is the also common move? Bishop e2. What is the least common move? f4. F4, it's an interesting move, not to be undermined, and contains some traps. Also, for instance, the best move for black here is knight c6. The interesting enough, whoever plays g6, you expect him to play bishop g7 on next move. However, after g6, f4, bishop g7 is a bad move. e5 is the answer. Suppose black takes, white takes, and black is in a lot of trouble. Now let's look why. There is knight g4. There is knight d7. After knight g4, black has bad position, and after knight d7 is bad position. Actually, I should say after knight d7 is back, after knight g4 is worse. So let's look. Knight d7, we go e6. And I don't think we should look at any more than that. So you can see the knight hangs. If knight moves, pawn is going to take on f7, check, and black is going to lose the castle. So, and if pawn takes, then knight takes e6. That's not very good either. Now let's see what's going to happen after knight g4 or knight d5. After knight g4, very unpleasant move, bishop b5 check. And now it's almost ended game. Well, what to do? On bishop d7, white is going to play queen takes g4, and they have an extra piece. Game ended. On knight c6, knight takes c6. On knight d7, also queen takes g4. And the worst thing can happen to them if they move the king, then it's knight e6. Check, followed by queen takes queen. So that's the worst. So knight g4 is bad. And what is going to happen if they go knight d5? Same, bishop b5 check. And also black is in trouble. Now, you see how the f4, is it a trap? Is it something that you should play for? No. Black's best move is knight c6. And then you can go knight f3, followed by bishop d3 and castle. And it's a normal playing position. But this is, in a way, it's a trap. Because after bishop g7, you're going to deal with a very difficult position. And in conclusion, I'm going to show you the conclusion of this very well hidden positional and tactical trap. It's a piece sacrifice that was developed in years that has very grave results for black if they fall in it. This is one of the most delicate things, well, if you can call it a trap. e6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight, the pawn a6, knight c3, knight c6, pawn g3, queen c7, bishop g2, and now black plays either d6 or knight e7 or knight f6. Let's go with the knight f6 move. Then we castle, and after bishop e7, knight takes c6, bc. This is, I'm just quickly quoting you one of the popular variations. Rook e1, d6, e5, d takes e, rook takes e5. This is one of the positions of Paulsen variations in Sicilian that is clearly favorable for white. And if black castles, there is a bishop f4 move threatening discover attack on a black's queen. And if bishop d6, then there is a rook takes e6 shot where white ends up winning some material. This is just quick overview of the some G3 variation of Paulsen. Now let's get to the actual trap part. I'll show you the trap part. So since some of these positions are not good in G3 variation of Paulsen, black started at some point they start be more aggressive in the opening part. I show you what I mean. CD, knight takes d4, a6, knight c3, b5, g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, queen c7, castle, knight f6, rook e1, and d6. Now, why is this more aggressive for black? Because they want to put knight on d7, it's more flexible than on c6, and bishop e7, eliminating e5 possibility. And if black accomplishes bishop e7, knight d7, and castle, this is going to be very good position for black. This is going to be better position for black. However, here comes the trap. This is a trap. This is black already fell into the trap, into positional and tactical trap. A4. Why positional and tactical? Because they can avoid disaster by taking on a4, but then white simply has an advantage in pawn structure. And if they go b4, then knight d5 at the beginning of the end. Pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, check. Bishop e7, obviously terrible because of knight f5. King goes to d8, bishop g5. Now black cannot finish development. Knight d7, queen e2, threatening queen e8 checkmate. King c8, queen e8 check. Obviously taking queen is not good because rook takes e8 and white wins easily. So after queen d8, queen takes f7, and it's very, very easy to see that black is totally lost. White has 2 pawns for minor piece, but there is a knight c6 threat, knight e6 threat, and game is over. So that's a good conclusion of this variation. So what I want to tell you in the end, that when you play for traps, make sure they have good positional ground and they do not interfere with your general plan. So if you do that, you will do yourself a great favor. Thank you very much.
This is Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for OnlineChessLessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from OnlineChessLessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.